Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, Election 2014, General Election, Gubernatorial Candidates. Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Mahealani Richardson, your host for tonight's show. Tonight, Insights brings you a discussion with all four candidates running for the office of Governor of the state of Hawaii. We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. The seating order and the first question were chosen by random draw. And now on to our candidates. Jeff Davis is the Libertarian gubernatorial candidate and a solar contractor. He hosts a radio show called Hawaii's Tomorrow on Talk Radio. The California native has called Hawaii home since 1978. This is his first time running for political office. Senator David Ige, the Democratic candidate for governor, has represented Pearl City and the Hawaii State Legislature since 1994. His committee assignments have included chairing the State House Education Committee, where he wrote the first charter school bills, and most recently serving as chairman of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. Duke Aiona is the Republican gubernatorial candidate. He was lieutenant governor during both terms of the Linda Lingle administration from 2002 to 2010. Prior to that, he was a family court judge and spearheaded the Hawaii Drug Court program. In 2010, he ran unsuccessfully for governor against Neil Abercrombie. And Mufi Hannemann is running for governor as an independent. He served as a member of the Honolulu City Council from 1994 through 2000 and later as Honolulu mayor from 2004 until 2010, when he resigned unsuccessfully to run for governor against Neil Abercrombie. He ran the following year for U.S. Congress but lost to Tulsi Gabbard. And welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Mr. Davis, the first question goes to you. What would be the first thing that you would change if you're elected into office?
Oh, first thing I would have to go for, and thank you for having me in here this evening.
You're welcome.
I'm under the impression that we've been trying to put all of our problems back together again after they're broken ad infinitum. I'm under the impression that if we could change the way which public officials were elected, Mahealani, in other states you'll have what's called a state-funded campaign, where the pay-to-play is taken out of the campaign process, and the politician or public servant is not required to go every 2 years, every 4 years, depending on his office, and collect money in order to keep his job. I'm under the impression if we could change the very nature, the way politicians were elected, allow them to be servants, term limits, for instance, and again, I like the idea of state-funded campaigns where you don't have unlimited amounts of money coming in generically. You're required to pay those campaign donations back with favoritism, and that's where we lose our government. For the people, by the people, Mahealani, has turned into for the special interest.
And let me
by the special interest. Did you just hear what I said?
Let me turn to Mr. Ige. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with your microphone. But Mr. Ige, Senator Ige, why don't you answer the question? What would be the first thing that would change in your administration?
Well, clearly, it would. The first thing you'd have to do is really assemble a team. You know, you can't govern and lead by yourself. So it really is about finding the best people. You know, we would be open, regardless of politics or background, to look to assemble the most qualified people in each and every position. You know, and we would be looking for people that share my collaborative style about bringing communities together rather than dividing them, and really focus on the guiding principles that I've used in my public service, which is really open and honest communications, listening and being respectful to all views, and then most importantly, doing the right thing the right way.
Mr. Aiona, if you're elected and are the next governor, how would things be different?
The change would come immediately upon our election. You'd have immediate balance in state government. Right now, as you all know, Mahealani, we have an imbalance in regards to political parties in our state government. So upon electing Duke Aiona and Elwanahu, we would have instant balance. But besides that, the first thing that we will, besides assembling a great staff, a great cabinet, great department heads, and the best, and of course, it'll be diverse, it'll be open, and all stakeholders will be involved in that, is we're going to attack the cost of living. We're going to make sure that we expand jobs, or our industries, our economy. We'll look for economy and jobs, and of course, education. Those are the three things that I think really touch everyone's lives right now.
Mr. Hannemann?
Well, as the only one that's had the opportunity to assemble a cabinet, it's not that easy. You have to really reach out and try to bring the best and the brightest in. And I'm going to take a page of what we did at the city when I put that cabinet together. Parties was secondary. I had Democrats in there, I had Republicans there, I had independents there. I even kept people as holdovers from the Mayor Harris administration. So that's very important because no one person can do it alone. And then I'm going to take another page when I became mayor, and I'm going to do a governor's review, even an audit, if you will, to look at the state of the finances. Nobody really knows what the state of the finances are. David Eager was trying to say during the legislative session, had he not cut with the legislature some $800 million, we wouldn't have that surplus that the governor was talking about. The governor, on the other hand, said, we have a surplus. And there's lots of ways that you can go in there and identify what it is that you want to fund, where the wasteful spending is taking place, and then also then put together a game plan, working collaboratively with the legislature so you don't get fights from day one. I think what's also important is to recognize the problems that have existed for years and years with the same old mentality and solutions. Highest energy costs in the country, some 300% above the national average. The real median income has declined by some 20% over the last 7 years. So those are real issues that people are saying they want change, they want a new approach, they want someone who's going to put the people first. And at the city, I governed in a nonpartisan culture. It wasn't about a Democratic pothole or Republican pothole. It was the people's pothole, and you got it done. And I really believe that one needs to go into state government and governing state government.
Now, out of fairness, Mr. Davis, we apologize. Your microphone was a little bit off during the first question, so we're going to give you a chance to answer that first question again. If you're if you're elected as governor, what would change in your leadership?
Well, I've said the first day I would offer these three gentlemen a job. I would reach across, as each one of us would, I think, agree upon. There's no boundaries to intelligence and to commitment to a better state of Hawaii. Each one of us are family men. Some of us my daughter, part Hawaiian, now I have a part Hawaiian baby granddaughter. We all have the same motives in the better for the state, but I feel that the status quo is a very easy pigeonhole to take when you look at the #1 problems Hawaii has, Mahealani. #1 in housing, cost of living, electricity, traffic, highest taxes, homelessness, methamphetamine. Our children are leaving the state of Hawaii, taking the grandchildren with them. This is not a healthy thing for Hawaii's ohana, for our future. I'm looking at a 50-year plan based on people who live in Hawaii and the families that have lived here for as long as thousands of years. And the short-term development that has been taking place is what's leading to all our children headed for the mainland.
Senator Ige, do you have the leadership and charisma to inspire people as governor and make the changes necessary to run the state?
I absolutely do, Mahealani. You know, I do have 29 years of experience in the legislature, and in every single assignment, I've had significant policy changes and legislation passed, whether it's the first comprehensive restructuring of the public school system, the first charter school laws in the state, establishing venture capital programs. You know, I've reformed auto insurance and workers' comp insurance. You know, I'm the only one at the table that have been successful in organizing majorities in the House and Senate, working with leadership, balancing the budget. I fought the pension taxes and other tax increases proposed. And again, as Mufi said, I cut $1 billion out of the budget request of the administration so that we could have a balanced budget, live within our means, and really focus on right-sizing state government.
Mr. Aiona, how much say did you have on specific issues during the Lingle administration on issues like furlough Fridays and the Superferry?
You know, Mahealani, thank you for that question, because the question is how much say did I have? Obviously, that's not my administration. That was Governor Lingle's administration, and I ran as lieutenant governor. And out of everyone on this table right here, that's a position that nobody has had, and it's a very unique position. And I took it very seriously. I didn't run just to have a title or to be somebody's running mate. I ran because it was a specific responsibility for lieutenant governor. And that responsibility is very simple. You are one heartbeat away from being governor. And that's your primary responsibility. Some may toss it on the side and say, oh, it's a do-nothing office, it's a do-nothing responsibility. But it is something that's very, very important. If anything happened to the governor, I would have to step in. And therein lies what I did for 8 years. I was ready to step in as governor. So did I have any say? I had input. I was part of the discussion. but ultimately it's the governor's decision. If that were the case, then we could say the same about Chancellor Sui right now. He was a part of Neil Abercrombie's administration. So why isn't he here talking about what they did in that previous administration? Les Chang is going to be Mufi Hannemann's LG. So should he be here also? I don't think so. And if you're number one and your number two wants to be governor, or he wants to have input, you better start worrying about what's happening in regards to number two.
What lessons did you learn from those controversies, and how would you use that in the governor's office?
I learned a lot. I learned basically, the tools that a governor has, or he has at his or her disposal in regards to working with the legislature. How to craft the budget, how you can craft policy, how you can use leverage in regards to your office. I learned that there were some very tough times in our second tenure. If you recall, Mahealani, in our first term, from 2002 to 2006, the economy was booming. We had a great time in 2004 and 2006. A lot of people did well during those periods. From 2006 to 2010, the economy kind of fell out. I shouldn't say kind of fell, it fell out. And some tough decisions had to be made. And I watched and I listened and I was a part of it, and I went with I sat with Governor Lingo as she paned through many of those tough decisions that she had to make. Let me just say something about this
Actually, let me move on to Mr. Hannemann.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Hannemann, you've been criticized as an opportunist now running for the governor's office as an independent. How do you respond to criticism that you're an opportunist?
Well, I think the main thing to recognize that I'm all about public service. There is an opportunity now to change the direction of this state. When I left the city in 2010, we left it in very good shape. Duke says in 2006, 2010, he's right. It was a major economic downturn, but the city was better off when I left. Our bond rating was one of the highest in the state. We never raided from the special funds. We made major improvements to our sewers. We had new infrastructure coming online with rail. Honolulu continued to be one of the safest big cities in America, and we became the leading digital city in America. So those things I felt were in a good place, because I really foresaw that our present governor would have a lot of problems from the standpoint that he came from the legislative chamber. And this is like taking someone who's played on the offensive line his whole life, and now you're going to give him the ball and say, now I want you to be a quarterback. So with all due respect to David in saying that he has that legislative experience, an executive has a far greater responsibility. You kind of have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them when the money is sent to the executive branch. Secondly, you deal with unions and collective bargaining. And
Mr.
thirdly,
Hannemann,
you also do public-private partnerships. So what I'm saying is that the opportunistic tag that has been hurled at me is really based on what I see in terms of making a public contribution to that particular office. And I think what Duke and I had talked about 4 years ago, about someone maybe not quite ready to make that leap, is what we saw manifested in the last 4 years.
Mr. Hannemann, we've had conversations in the past where you insisted you were a Democrat when people wondered if you were a Republican because of your conservative views. So how can you explain that you're running as an independent now?
Simple. I'm probably the only person, for example, in Hawaii that has worked for 4 U.S. presidents, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. I've always been about working with both parties, and that's why we thrived in a nonpartisan culture in the city. Yes, I was a Democrat, but I always got along with Republicans. In fact, my administration, every bill that I vetoed was never overturned by the council.
Mahealani, if I could just interject.
Go ahead.
Nonpartisan environment in the city council. And they may run as nonpartisans, but they don't serve as nonpartisans. Every single one of the council members, as well as the executives that I've been in contact with in regards to all councils, they all identify with their political party. They serve as Democrats, they act as Democrats, and they vote as Democrats. So this partisan tag is really I would say window dressing and nothing more.
Can I interject there? Because that's
Go ahead one more time, and then I'm going to give Senator Ige a chance
It's
to
obvious
respond to
that Duke Aiona has never served in a county council or in a county government.
And
they don't
gladly I haven't, yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hannemann.
They have never In my particular situation there, and if you talk to a Billy Kinoy, a Bernard Cavallo, and Alan Arakawa, you know, parties are not as important as getting the business done of the people. So this business about voting according to party platform doesn't hold. I remember when the Democratic Party chair came before us when I was a council member and tried to urge us to vote a certain way for Camp Kailua. Those of us that were Democrats there say, maybe in the platform, so forth, but we're going to vote on what's best for the people.
Senator Ige, I get the sense that you want to weigh in on this topic too.
Well, you know, I do think that, you know, for me, it's all about public service and really doing the best that you can on behalf of the people of Hawaii. I've never decided to hear bills because they were Republican or Democrat. I passed Republican bills out of my committees, and, you know, I lose track of whether they're passed or not. Well, you know, it really is about focusing on the opportunity and working to get a consensus to move legislation forward.
Well, let's talk about the health care.
Actually, let me move on to Mr. Davis. So we have a specific question for you, Mr. Davis. You're running on specific issues like homelessness, the Jones Act, and pay to play. Would you be able to run an entire state with 51,000 employees?
I think that if I can get the proper help with me, why not? As I mentioned, these fellows are all offered a job. I don't really think it's the leadership that's missing here. I think it's a vision for the future and a less attachment from the past. I mean, in some ways, we could sit here and they could fight over who spilled the milk. Okay, I have a free pass on that. I've never run for office or held public office, and it's sad to say, Mahealani, that's one of my best attributes in our state that has a list of #1 bad things that all results in our children leaving the state in droves. Running an office comes from being open to change. And what we have here in Hawaii is a picture, a frozen snapshot. We have one party in control. The idea that it's not party dominated, ridiculous. We've got one party in control. I wonder how many folks out there know we've got one Republican in the entire Senate of the legislature in Hawaii. And we need a change, Mahealani, from the top, fundamental change. And I can guarantee you're going to get, ladies and gentlemen, a vote for me. That's your only choice. Because with these esteemed gentlemen, they come from a background, I'm afraid you're going to get a lot more of the same.
Well, we have a lot of questions from our viewers, so I wanted to get to some of these right now. David from Honolulu, and I'll ask this to Senator Ige first. Should the legislature fund UH athletics, which has been running a deficit for many years, 13 years? You
know, I've been a big proponent of empowering the university and giving them fiscal flexibility. I gave them the lump sum budget a number of years ago, and we have given them flexibility to manage their funds. It really is the regents and the president of the university who really should be making that decision, you know, and if they can't, you know, I really trust the regents and the president of the university to be able to make that decision. If they want to involve the governor or the legislature, I'm certain that everyone in the Capitol would be willing to jump in and try and get involved. But it really is about the university having autonomy, making the decisions about what is most important for that Manoa campus.
Mr. Aiona, what do you think about that?
Well, I said this earlier, and I think David's picked up on this, obviously, is that I believe that the problem at the University of Hawaii is leadership. And they haven't had that opportunity to really be autonomous, as was just mentioned. You've had now 4 presidents, I believe, in the last 10 years. And the situation at the University of Hawaii is such that whenever something doesn't go right, you have politicians interjecting into regards to basically what I would call management issues. So the Stevie Wonder blunder happens. That's a management issue. We have a Senate investigation into that. You have now 2 finalists for president. People don't like that. You have the president of the Senate, you have the governor, you have the House Speaker calling up the Board of Regents and saying, what's wrong with this process? We need more. We got to give the leaders at the University of Hawaii an opportunity to lead before we can start talking about things like this. And the legislature, as well as the executive branch, should resign itself to the role that it should be, which is that of support. And if there's a question about funding, then so be it. That's their prerogative. They're giving the money. The legislature should ask those questions. But to interject and put conditions, which basically happened the last time with this budget, It's nonsense. And this is why we are where we are with the University of Hawaii.
You know, Mr. Hannemann, this whole issue about UH athletics, you know, points to the issue of the revolving door at the University of Hawaii, and it's been an expensive one with these top leadership positions leaving and then costing the UH. So what could you do as governor to correct that problem?
Well, I think both Duke and David hit the nail on the head on that one there. It's all about leadership. It's about removing the politics that has you know, been preventing the university from doing things in an autonomous way. So it's not just the legislative branch, it's some of the folks on Bishop Street. You got to say, you know what, there's a new sheriff in town and we're going to do it differently. Whether it's the athletic program, whether it's funding for the other academic programs there. But I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships. And as someone who's been a chief executive at state level, once again, the legislature can put the money in there, but if you have the experience of reaching out to major organizations, not just throughout the United States, but throughout the Asia-Pacific Rim, and use that brand name that the University of Hawaii has. Many people have benefited from the University of Hawaii education that are residing, doing business throughout the Asia-Pacific region, and I want to be at the forefront of saying to them, why don't you help us make this institution one of the best in the Pacific Asian region, and whatever their interests may be, whether it's athletics, whether it's in the social science, academics, what have you, let's draw them back. And I have done that as mayor. I have done that in the private sector. My business right now is in the Asia Pacific region. I'm willing to bring all those contacts, those relationships, and make it do something on behalf of the state of Hawaii, especially our university.
Mr. Davis, you know, the public has been very skeptical about what's going on at UH, and some people have lost confidence in the UH system. What would you propose to do as governor?
Well, I think the UH, Mahealani, is basically the micro of the macro, in the sense that look at our entire education system. Where it regards the state of Hawaii. You do not have to, you know, isolate the UH for that. We've got way too much importance placed on their bureaucracies. We've got the bureaucracy riding in back and the students and the teachers pulling them at the horse and the cart. I believe it should be the other way around, where the UH bureaucracy and the people who run it, the presidents, the deans, you name it, should be learning more and more, taking more and more input from teachers and from students. So your question is just the same question, what are we going to do with our whole education system and some of the many problems? I mean, first thing you got to do is get a new sheriff, because it's an old adage, the new boss, same as the old boss. I think that what we learned in a primary, for instance, for governor showed that people in Hawaii are ready for a change. And I'm so honored to be here, but at the same time, one of my greatest attributes, besides being a business owner and a father and someone who's lived in Hawaii for decades, is the fact that I'm not a professional politician.
Mr. Aiona, someone wants to know about unions, and this is Pua from Cover It Live. She wants to know, what is your relationship with the unions, and how can we be assured that they will not stifle efforts to move Hawaii forward?
Well, you can ask them what their relationship with the unions are, because they got all the endorsements. I don't have any endorsements from any public or private union, but that doesn't mean I don't have a relationship. I'm just talking about leadership. I have a tremendous relationship with the members of, I think, almost every single public and or private labor union that we have in this state. And I've talked to many of the leaders also. So I look at it this way. Because I've been asked that same question in regards to working with the legislature, right? Obviously, I would be in the minority in regards to parties. As Jeff mentioned, in our state Senate, we got 1 Republican out of 25. You know, we got 7 Republicans out of 51 in the state House. And so what does it come down to? It comes down to relationships. And that's what my whole life has been about. And if you look at my professional career as a judge, as an attorney, and then, of course, you know, when I went into private practice, and it's all about relationships. I'm a mediator, I'm an arbitrator. I know how to bring people together. I know how to facilitate. I know how to manage conflict, and that's really what it's all about. So I don't think I'd have a problem.
Senator Ige, what's your relationship, and is there a balance in terms of a relationship with the unions?
You know, there always is a balance. You know, I have good working relationships with many rank and file as well as the union leadership. You know, I do think that when you look at the public employee, you know, many hardworking individuals are really committed to the notion of public service. You know, they oftentimes are getting paid less than their private sector counterparts. You know, and they are many times just committed to the mission of state government and whatever their job is. So I view the employee as really a significant asset of the state government, and we need to make investments in them. I think for the most part that 90% of the issues are aligned and common. The perspective of management and the perspective of the worker would be aligned. It's that 10% where it's management's job to manage the employees that there is that conflict. So I think that oftentimes you would have more in alignment than disagreement. And then as executive, you have to make the tough decisions. You have to negotiate. You have to negotiate benefits because everything needs to balance. And at the end of the day, taxpayer has to pay for all of those employees.
Mr. Hannemann, we've seen past governors where the relationship is pretty adversarial. How would you work or not work with the unions?
Well, once again, it's because of the past experience I've had of having endorsements that David is receiving in this race. And by the way, I know, Duke, that you tried for endorsements, so it's not clear.
No.
You should be more forthright about that, because I know you tried for endorsements from the union. Having said that, the fact of the matter is this. You got to lead by example. And when I was prepared to make significant pay cuts, I would always ask my executive branch to do it first, because I said eventually we're going to have to ask the union to do that. And I think having had the experience too of conducting collective bargaining, being one of 5 votes that a governor needs to go forward, that put me in good stead in going forward. So you don't always please them. You don't always do what they want in terms of the percentage of the pay raise. But if you lay out a program and you're fair about it, and you say, if in fact we're going through tough times, we're making sacrifices, we need to save some jobs here, we need to save some programs, I don't anticipate the kind of problems that governors have had, like Linda Lingo when she was dealing with the unions, or Neil Abercrombie dealing with the unions.
Mr. Aiona, could you be fair with the unions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about that. And in regards to seeking endorsements, it's been told to me, and Mufi, that's not true. I sought one endorsement, okay. and that was from Shopo. And the only reason I sought that endorsement was because I believe I am the perfect fit for them, and many of the members are supportive of me because of the work that I've done with them as a prosecutor, as a judge, and they know my background. So let's be truthful.
Who did they ultimately
endorse?
Let's
just be truthful about
endorse?
It. Okay.
Who did they endorse?
They endorsed Mufi Hannemann. Okay, absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis. I know you want to weigh in on this.
I think you guys are talking about the unions as if they were an entity instead of human beings. And although
right,
it's
Jeff.
Quite true that they often are used as cannon fodder for the Democratic machine, if I may say, in the sense that you throw them a rail, you throw them a Kakaako, they know where their bread's buttered, but these guys are fathers and mothers first.
The membership.
And the membership, exactly. And I really believe, Mahealani, that when approached with a change, I don't think the union's going to be so stuck in lockstep, politically speaking, as we might think, if offered a change. But when you offer them the same old, better the devil you know, in many respects, but keep your job security at the expense of the rest of the state, I don't think most union members would go that far if given a different opportunity, if given an option for change.
I agree with Jeff. It really comes down to, again, relationships, and when we deal with the unions, and this will be on the public sector side. Obviously, it's about dads, it's about grandparents, everything that I am, a grandfather, a dad, a coach, a brother, an uncle, and that's what it all comes down to. So ultimately, it's about the membership. Leadership is one thing, and that's where decisions are made in regards to endorsements. And we know very well, Mahealani, let's be honest about this. When has a public union endorsed a Republican for statewide race?
Let's move on to another topic. Mr. Davis, hang on just a second. Wait, hang on just a second. We need to move on to.
They endorsed Linda Lingo for governor. Shopo did.
That was it. Oh, that's Shopo.
They endorsed Linda Lingo.
Shopo did.
That's a public.
All right, I think we're over with this union issue, but I wanted to move on to another interesting topic, and that is religion. And I know, Mr. Aiona, this has been a very careful topic for you. And a lot of people, actually several people, have emailed us and called us tonight wondering, will there be a separation of church and state, especially if, as with Lieutenant Governor Elwin Ahu, with your administration?
Oh, absolutely. You're talking to 2 judges who understand what the law is, and obviously know constitutional rights and liberties. And so we obviously are advocates of that. We were actually the pillars of that as judges. And I've said this in regards to trust, respect, and balance, which is the theme of our campaign. We understand that because as judges, we understood what it meant to have trust from the litigants who came before us, because we understood that we had to give them respect. So when they came into our courtroom, they knew that our decisions would be based on the law. It wouldn't be based on prejudice. It wouldn't be based on emotion. And it definitely wouldn't be based on anything that was emotional. So it's based on the law, and as such, they would give us the kind of trust and respect that we'd give them the respect that they needed, and we would have that in the courtroom.
Senator Ige, do you have any concerns about this?
You know, I don't really have any concerns. I'm a Buddhist. I think for the most part, all of us separate the practice of faith versus, our jobs at the Capitol. For me personally, there really hasn't been any challenge in terms of separating, equal rights, equal treatment of people throughout whoever appears before the committee. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm certain that we can move forward in a way that serves the public. Mr.
Davis?
I have bigger fish to fry, Mahealani. We spend $16 billion a year to import 92% of our food. We make $12 billion.
Would there be a separation of church and state in your administration? Again,
asking me a question about someone's personal religious beliefs rather than addressing hard economics. In my administration, church and state are the same and completely separate at the same time. Mr. Aiona's got a different issue to carry with him, as he's well known to be. Well, aren't you a pastor, Duke, as well? And
no, I'm not a pastor.
Well, you're engaged, and that's a beautiful thing. That's what you believe. Church and state should be obviously separated. Mr. Aiona's got a professional background in that, and it'd be up to him to do that. Myself, I have nothing and no dog in the fight for church and state.
Mr. Hannemann, go ahead on that.
I've never had a problem with this. As mayor, you're the mayor of all of Oahu. As governor, you're the mayor of the state of Hawaii. You have to recognize all religions. I've been known to be very active in going to Buddhist Bon dances. I've gone to services, Muslim religion, Jewish religion. You just have to practice that. You know what you are, you know what you stand for. Families are very important. But at the end of the day, you have to respect people's religion and respect separation of church and state.
We have a woman from Kakaako wants to know about something in her own neighborhood, the development of Kakaako. So Mr. Hannemann, if you're elected governor, what would change about Kakaako, or how would you make sure that development is moving forward in an appropriate way?
Well, I wish that the legislature had looked at it very closely in 2010, because we actually tried to introduce legislation to move Kakaako at that time to the city, keep the ocean area with Department of Transportation as well as the DLNR, and it never even got a hearing. So what happened now is you've seen the rush of these luxurious high-rise proposals that have come forward that has really frightened people across the board from a planning perspective and also from the cost perspective. How many people can afford, $10 million or $20 million, even $100 million luxurious high-rise? They can't do that. So what I'm saying is, I know some reforms have been put forward in the legislature, but it's broken. Shift it back now to the city. Let the city have the planning authority. Let the city take advantage of transit-oriented development, which provides a lot of opportunities to build affordable housing. The city has a higher threshold of affordable housing. And most importantly, make sure that people can feel that Kakaako is going to be theirs, or return it back to the people, as opposed to what you're seeing now. If you're a wealthy foreign investor, it seems to be the magnet that's drawing people to Kakaako.
Mr. Aiona, do you think that the city should be controlling Kakaako more?
If you go back to the history of the Kakaako Development District, you're going to find out that it was a political division that started way back in 1974. And it kind of behooves me that if that were the right place for it to be, if politics were set aside, then why are we now, 30, 40 years down the line, and we're talking about something, especially and only after you have now movement within the Kakaako district? I mean, up until this point in time, it was pretty stagnant in regards to what was happening to Kakaako. You had back and forth. And if you recall correctly, it was the legislature that basically put a kind of a moratorium in regards to what's happening on the Makai side of Kakaako, and really, I'm going to use this word because maybe this is not the right word, but it kind of handcuffed and stifled the executive branch and took them out of the conversation in regards to what was happening in Kakaako. The appointments are limited in regards to how, who the executive can appoint. It's down to 3 names submitted by basically the legislature, and then you put that committee or that commission together. But this is what I would do. I would first and foremost try to do the best I can in regards to the commission and put a nice diversity of balanced commission together. I would basically tell them, okay, here's the direction. We got to make sure that we got enough affordable homes and rentals in Kakaako. So let's move the bar up. Let's move it to 30%. In addition to that, the 30% affordability requirement that we would have, as well as rentals, wouldn't be for 10 years, it wouldn't be for 15 years, it would be for generations. And in this, we can pick a number, 60 years, 30 years, whatever it may be. What we can't do is constantly have these loopholes where basically if it pencils out for the developers, that they can buy tax credits or they can buy other pieces of parcel and move that requirement that they have for affordables, because that's happening on the city side too.
Senator Ige, I'm going to give you a chance to respond about the legislature side of this, and what would be your overall vision if you're governor?
Well, clearly, legislature felt that development in Kakaako was too much, too fast. As said before, too much emphasis on luxury high-rises, focused on foreign investors. I think the legislature heard that loud and clear. It really is about creating, going back to the original vision of an opportunity for live, work, play, where people price housing at all price points. People who workforce housing for those working in Waikiki was part of the original vision. And if you look at the plans, we did change the makeup of the board. We hope to get more balance. If elected governor, I would welcome the opportunity to really put in people that are more representative of the people, of equal balance. And I think most importantly, I think we have to keep the momentum moving forward. Moving it back to the county, stops everything and creates another big disruption into what's happening. And I think if we looked at the master plans, we stuck to the design guidelines, we would get a Kakaako that is live, work, play for the people of Hawaii.
Mr. Davis, what would the public see change in Kakaako if you were governor?
I think, Mahealani, aloha, that the ifs and it will and we've gone too far. The HCDA, basically a twin of the PLDC, where the state's getting involved and politics are getting involved and re-elections getting involved. You bring in the developer, you bring in the unions, so the re-election is possible. This is the typical new boss, same as the old boss mentality. I agree and have long thought that the HCDA has shown its colors on so many occasions. Right now, we have not lived, worked, and played in Kakaako because the Democratic Party is up there. They're the ones controlling the HCDA in so many ways. As many have spoken, there needs to be a broader aspect, more representation from the community and different parties inside of a group that has so much control over your billions and the very future, but should have been to live, work, and play for our children, not to live, work, and play for out-of-state investment. I say take the HCDA apart, give it back to the city, and let's move forward again and with change. Not, I swear to God, it's going to happen this time. We need to provide housing for our children.
Taxing pensions was a big issue in the last few years. Mr. Davis, Kelly via email wants to know, would you propose a tax on retiree pensions? And if yes, could you explain your rationale?
I'll say no and explain that rationale. We have bigger ways and easier ways to get income into our state, and that would be by removing the Jones Act from our shipping costs. So we used to grow 90% of our food as recently as 1930. We now import 92% of our food at 16 billion. We've got our oil at another 6 or 7 billion. We make 12 in tourism. If we do not incentivize agriculture, we would have to go and tax pensions. But there are other more sustainable ways to bring in income than taxing our seniors.
Mr. Hannemann?
I would not tax the pensions of seniors. I believe that seniors deserve to live the rest of their lives in dignity. I believe that seniors are on a fixed income, and that's something that was expected of government to provide when they became a government employee. But here's the difference. Rather than look for taxing alternatives, once again, it's having the advantage of being an executive, I will bring ideas to grow the economy so that we can have more dollars spread around. I really believe there's opportunities to continue to bring quality tourism to this state. I want to go for an international visa waiver program, visa waiver policy for China and Hawaii. I spent some time doing business in the Asia-Pacific region. The Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas has a visa waiver with China. It's American soil. Why not have a pilot program here in Hawaii? So where we can bring in those high-end tourists, control it, so that's sustainable type of tourism. Have a model where we're talking about agritourism, environmental tourism, educational tourism, so people will come here, invest, learn, partake of it, and leave their monies behind so that we can grow this economy.
Mr. Aiona, what are your thoughts on it? And is it so easy to just say, no, I'm not going to raise taxes on anything?
I think Mufi raises a point in regards to the premise of the question. And the premise is basically about revenue enhancement. I mean, we are at some very precarious times right now. And the quick answer to that is absolutely not. Definitely, I'm not going to raise any, I'm not going to invoke any type of pension tax. And actually, you know, it goes down again to, as I said, revenue enhancement and what are we going to do? Mr. Ige has stated in previous forums, he stated that he actually killed the pension tax that was introduced into the legislature. But I have a question for him in regards to, in 2003, he introduced a bill to actually tax pensions. And that was killed in the Labor Committee, but it was introduced by Senator Ige. So again, the question is, when it comes to this precarious point that we're at right now, in regards to, you know, the budget is shrinking, okay? We're gonna come to a point, maybe even next year. You know, Senator Sloan has already brought that to the attention of the legislators, as well as to Calvert Young, the budget and finance chief, and he's acknowledged it, and he says, you're right, you're absolutely right, Senator Sloan. Come 2016, we're gonna look at a shrinking budget. And at that point in time, the legislature is gonna have to make a decision as to what they're gonna do. Are they going to increase revenue? Or are they going to basically streamline government? And based on what's happened in the last 4 years, they have not streamlined government. What they have done is, and Mr. Ige said this the other night, where he said he cut the governor's budget by about $1 billion. What he really did was he cut spending, the increased spending that the previous administration had done in regards to the submission of their budget. What the legislature has done in the past 4 years is they've increased spending by $1.2 billion. And that's a burden on us, the taxpayers, and it increases the cost of living. So in response to your question in regards to whether or not I would raise the pension, absolutely not.
Senator Ige, your response, and you know, why don't you weigh on this topic?
Well, and I'm glad that Duke brought this up, because I do know that my opponents will be digging up all kinds of votes from past history. You know, this is 10 years ago. You know, the Constitution provides that only senators or House members can introduce legislation into the process. The bill that Duke raises was a constituent request. You know, I've always believed, be respectful, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with the proposal. A constituent calls, he says he would like the legislature to consider taxing pensions. Duke, if you understand the process, I introduced that bill by request. It's explicitly laid out in the record that it was a request made by a constituent who believed that that should be considered. And as the sitting representative, as the senator, I felt an obligation, regardless of my personal view of that measure, to introduce it on his behalf. Now, you know, I absolutely would not tax pensions, and I've introduced legislation to change the Constitution to prohibit that from going on a forward basis. And I do think that there are lots of opportunities to grow our economy and be more efficient. You know, I've been a big proponent of tax modernization and investing in IT systems throughout all state government, because that allows state government to do more with less.
I get the sense that all of you want to ask each other questions. So, Mr. Hannemann, do you have a question for one of your opponents?
Well, my question is basically this. Let me ask this of David Ige. The state hospital system. I recently came up with a proposal that says we have to move to public-private partnerships to save something that has cost us lots of money every year. This year they're talking about a $30 to $40 million deficit. Last year it lost $165 million. I'm talking about the 12 state hospitals. That's not a new idea, but it's an idea I want to bring back to the table, because there was a key part of that whole debate during the last legislative session where proponents of public-private partnerships needed some help from the legislature, especially in terms of safeguarding the public employees that are part of it, which I really believe we need to do. That bill died at the legislature, and I understand you were one of those that voted to kill that bill. If that was the case, you know, given all your understanding of the budget, why wouldn't you try to save that hospital with all the cuts that are being made? Understand too, you've been at the forefront of cuts to the University of Hawaii budget, including the medical school. We face a doctor shortage. We are 750 doctors short. University of Hawaii Medical School,
do you have a
graduates
specific
66.
question?
Yeah, I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. And the question is, why would you then cut the budget, UH Medical School budget, and not support an opportunity to do a public-private partnership to save the hospitals?
You know, Mufi, thank you very much for that question. You know, as chair of health committee, I have worked on the public hospital system for a long time. And if you go back 5 years ago, I did pass a measure that restructured the public hospital system. It restructured the boards because the neighbor islands were asking for more representation on the management board of the Hawaii health systems. And most importantly, Mufi, if you look at that legislation, it does have an opportunity for a transition to a public-private partnership. At the time that we passed that legislation, I worked with my colleagues. I got consensus in both the House and the Senate. We moved that measure forward. It protected the interest of the employees. It does provide a gateway for a public-private partnership. The challenge that we had at that time was that there were no players on the horizon. The exact form of what that partnership would look like was not defined, so it does provide for a shell. It does provide for a process to transition, but there are lots of details to be decided. And let me just say this. The bill about moving the partnership for this session never came out of conference because there never was an agreement about what the details should be. House or Senate, there was no vote on it.
But that's where leadership comes in. David.
Right, well, yes, I agree. But I wasn't the point person on the conference committee, and the conference committee was unable to arrive at a
Senator,
consensus.
I think you did answer the question. Mr. Davis, do you have a question for one of your opponents?
Any one of them could take it, and the question is, isn't this just another election like all the rest of them, guys, where we have the lowest voter turnout in America, not brought up here, along with the highest homeless per capita and highest meth issues. The status quo has driven Hawaii into #1.
Specifically, one question though.
The question would be, can any of you give me the feeling that indeed change will occur if any one of you were elected to the governor?
I'll take that. I really believe the model that I'm representing is what it's all about. I have been a lifelong Democrat. Those associations will not disappear overnight because I'm an independent candidate. This is Hawaii. There's friendships, and Duke spoke to that very eloquently.
David, what about you?
You know, absolutely. I'm probably the biggest change agent at the table. You know, I have been all of my career successful in bringing people together to find common ground to get things passed. As chairman of the health committee, I did advance the notion of a public-private partnership.
And Duke?
Mr. Aiona, why don't you go ahead and answer that,
Yeah.
and then ask a question to one of your opponents.
You know, in response to your question, you're saying the status quo. Need I say anything more in regards to when you talk about longevity? You know, longevity is at the table, not here. You know, I served in, like I said, a very unique role as lieutenant governor, very unique. That's the only office that I've served in regards to serving as an elected public servant. So, obviously, the answer, are you expecting anything different, Jeff? It's yes.
Mr. Aiona, do you have a question for one of your opponents?
You know, I just, and I'm not, please, David, don't think I'm ganging up on you in this, but the question on the hospital was very interesting because, you know, that's an issue, that is a concern that has been with this community for quite some time. Absolutely. And I remember when I was LG, I remember that the legislature commissioned a report. I think it was Stroudwater was the company that they commissioned it with, $250,000 report that the legislature funded, and that report came back, and the legislature never ever even considered it. Okay, basically it's on a shelf, I guess, collecting dust. So this is a problem that has been around for a long time. You just said something about basically, you know, it got stalled in committee because there was nobody at the table, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with Mufi in regards to it being leadership. You are the chair of the most powerful committee in the Senate. If anybody wants to move a bill, you can, okay? You can.
Absolutely.
And you never moved.
Mr. Aiona, what's your question?
The question is why? Why did you not see the urgency in regards to this issue and get it resolved? Get it to the table and get it resolved, because it has to be. We've been kicking this can down the road for too long.
Absolutely.
And I'd like you to add up How many millions of dollars have we spent on the Hawaii Health Systems Corporation because the legislature, these are underfunded?
Senator Ige, why don't you go ahead and respond to that?
But, you know, I would. And it's obvious that, that people here at the table don't really know how the legislature works. You know, there are people that are put in charge of these bills that manage it through the conference. Yes, I am chairman of Ways and Means, and I am co-conference on many bills throughout the process. You know, in the case of the reform for the Health Systems Corps, it's the Health Committee chair on the House and the Health Committee chair on the Senate that lead the conference committee. They work through the specific details of what it would look like to move a bill that would allow for a public-private partnership to go. My responsibility as chair of the Ways and Means Committee is to really work with them on the financial aspects of that measure. I did work with both chairs in the House. They could not get agreement on what the bill should look like moving forward, and we were not successful in arriving.
And finally, Senator Ige, if you'd like to ask one of your opponents a question, go ahead.
Well, you know, I would like to ask Mr. Aiona. He talks about being able to be collaborative. You know, the 8 years that he was lieutenant governor, Governor Lingo was governor, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of cooperation. You know, they proposed all kinds of measures that very few of them got adopted. There were a record number of vetoes, record number of overrides. What would be different? How would you, if elected governor, move the state forward?
Well, I'm not here to defend Governor Lingo, obviously, but you keep referencing me, you know, and putting me at the hip with Governor Lingo. But I will say this: you said there was a lack of, I guess you could say, relationship with the legislature. Then why is it that, you know, energy, which is a big topic, right, in the state of Hawaii, and probably one of the drivers in cost of living in the state of Hawaii, why is it that it was Governor Lingo's leadership in regards to the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative that not only passed the legislature, but made history in regards to setting up not only a program with the state government, but also with the federal government? And it's a model right now, not only here in Hawaii, but also throughout the nation in regards to where we are in renewable energy and bringing energy security to the state of Hawaii. It was Governor Lingo that did that. It was her leadership. So, you know, I don't think the premise of your question is as accurate as you want it to be. How will it be different with me? As I mentioned earlier, David, this is about relationships. As Mufi said, you know, this is Hawaii. Born and raised there. I got many relationships with many people, not only in the legislature, but also in the Senate. And it comes down to that, you know. I got many relationships with people who are members in the unions, who are leaders in the union also. So it comes down to that, as I mentioned earlier, and I can tell you right now, it's going to happen. Things will happen.
You know, Liana from Hau'ula brings up the issue of the Superferry, and there's a lot of questions about that. So, Mr. Davis, what's your position on bringing the Superferry back?
Mahealani, I speak several languages, and most of them I could go to an archipelago, whether it would be China, Indonesia, Filipino, Central America.
Would you bring the Superferry back?
There's not a single archipelago on the planet that doesn't have interacting transport for individuals. It's ridiculous that Hawaii does not have some manner for us to go back and forth from island to island. It seems more the same. It's a monopoly type of power play, and it needs to be changed.
So yes?
Of course.
Senator Ige?
You know, obviously, if there is a business that is interested in restarting this ferry, as governor, I would work with them to ensure entry to ports. You know, the real issue is follow all the rules, complete all the environmental impact statements, you know, and complete all of the assessments that's required to really proceed. That was the problem in the original project. You know, the administration cut corners and didn't follow the law, and that's what blew it up. So, I mean, yes, I support it. Follow the laws, do the studies, engage the communities.
Mr. Aiona, you saw firsthand the protests, but then there were so many people who really like the Superferry. So would you try to do it again?
You know, first of all, yes, obviously, if and Jeff brought one point out, if you have the business model for it. I mean, that's the most important thing right now. Do you have the business model for it? Everything else will follow from that. Is there an investor for this? Yeah, is there someone who's interested in bringing this back? If not, then what kind of model are we going to have? Are we going to have something like the rail? I mean, this is a huge public works project that we're going to bring on if we adopt it as a public works project, because that's the other alternative. Either you bring in a private investor, a private company to make the Superferry happen, or it may have to be a public works investment or a public-private partnership. Either way, it's a lot of money and it's a lot of cost, and it's not something that you just put out in front of people and say, you bring false hope and say, yeah, we're going to bring back the Superferry, because there was a lot more than just what Senator Ige just said.
Mr. Hannemann, I know that you support bringing the Superferry back, but have you gotten any commitments from investors or companies that if you are indeed elected governor, that yes, they would support financially a new Superferry?
Well, I need to go back a little. When I was the first one in this campaign to talk about bringing it back, based on what I was hearing. I've even seen a survey the Star Advertiser did that's 87% of the people said they would support it if they did the EIS. So I'm glad to see that Senator Ige is no longer saying that he would study it. I'm glad to hear that Duke Aiona is not saying no comment, because there is a lot of support for this. And here's the thing, there's lessons learned. That EIS should have been done. And what you need is a leadership model first and foremost, listening to the people on something they want. You may not have all the answers yet, but you need to let them know that you're going to try to do it. So this model also I've talked about of working with the 4 mayors. I expect the 4 mayors to be collaboratively working on this to convince the people that this is the best thing to do. But there will be those who will object to it. Bring them into the tent. And the experience of doing rail will be very I believe, complementary in this regard, because that was a big project that had to go out to the people. Now,
well,
this
Mr.
is what
Hannemann,
I know.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and so we have to end our conversation. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to get cut off really shortly. Mr. Hannemann, Senator Ige, Mr. Aiona, and Mr. Davis, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a very spirited and wonderful conversation.
It has been. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, next week on Insights, we bring you the candidates for 2 state House races, one on the windward side of Oahu and the other on the island of Hawai'i. In House District 51, incumbent Democrat Chris Lee is being challenged by Republican Wayne Hikita for a chance to represent Kailua and Waimanalo. And then midway through the show, we'll bring you the 2 candidates vying to represent House District 4 in Puna, previously held by controversial Representative Faye Hanohano, Joy San Buenaventura, a Democrat, and Gary Thomas, a Republican, will talk about their priorities. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawai'i. I'm Mahealani Richardson. Ahui ho.